Good evening, everyone. It's Friday night, 9 p.m., and we are back to you with a brand new episode of the PSAI talk show. It's raining heavy in Bangalore, and I'm right here saying hello to you and hoping that the weather holds up and we can have an amazing conversation. The PSAI talk show, before I get into that, let me share a little bit about what the PSAI is. The PSAI, the Professional Speakers Association of India, is an association of professional speakers that has been created to hone the skills, the business, and the brand of professional speaking by creating an ecosystem which is based on collaboration, which is based on trust, and which is based on nurturing each other's skills. And this talk show is a platform for us to showcase to you our lineup of amazing speakers so that they can share their experience with you, they can share insights with you, and you can see them up front and know about their journey in a very in a fun conversational format. So that's how the PSAI talk show came about, and the PSAI stands for. Now, the vision of the PSAI is to be the #1 association for professional speakers in the country. And the mission is to empower professional speakers of India to influence, thrive, and achieve excellence in the business of speaking. And we stand for 4 values. We call it as the right set of values. R stands for respect. I stands for integrity. T, trust. And E, excellence. That's the pillar. Those are the 4 pillars of values that we stand on. And today we are going to introduce a very interesting person to you. Today, it's my honor and it's my pleasure to present to you the world's first renewalist. Now, the first time when I heard the term renewalist, I was wondering, okay, what exactly does this renewalist stand for? What does it actually mean? I went further. This man is an empowerer. He's an inner power coach. He's a mindfulness expert. But the most interesting thing was when I was reading reading about him. He has traveled across the world, right from the Himalayas to 4 continents, around 46 cities, and he's spoken and he's shared his wisdom all over the world. It is my pleasure today to introduce Sandeep Nath, the world's first renewalist, the inner power coach, Qigong and mindfulness trainer, an Oriental energy master, an international speaker, a globally acclaimed author, a virtual broadcaster and a writer, and very importantly, which is so relevant in today's circumstances and the times that we are living in, he is a crusader against stress. Presenting to you, ladies and gentlemen, Sandeep Nath.
Hi. Good evening, everybody. What an absolute delight and honor this is to be on the PSAI talk show. Guys, Vinay, thank you so much. This is, it's a chat between friends, and I'm so looking forward to this. So thanks, everybody, joining in live, and let's see how this goes. I'm totally unprepared.
Hey, Sandeep. Thank you very much for being here. It's an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you, my friend. How are you doing today?
Doing very well in Delhi, and the weather has cooled off today, so it's a nice day for everything.
Wonderful. Before we even start the conversation, there was one thing that intrigued me the most. An IIT IIM alumnus, someone who ran a very successful brand strategy consulting company. Where did Qigong feature into it? How did the inner power coach thing happen? How did that happen? How did you become an expert on mindfulness? How did this shift in paradigms happen? The how, the where, and the why.
Boy. You never stop introducing me. Now you want me to introduce myself too. But there is a lot of depth to that question, because I can actually take you guys back 15 years. And many of you may be still experiencing what I experienced 15 years ago. I was running this consulting company, as you mentioned, Vinay, and I was consulting to large clients like Genpact, large BPOs, and something, and we were working on internal and external culture building and integrated communications. So I was within the company, and it started disturbing me. It started disturbing me that an entire generation of very smart young Indians, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of kids here, are working against the biorhythm, solving problems that, to my mind, should not have existed in the first place, and feeling that that's okay, that's their purpose. Now, that got me wondering, is that the purpose? Is that what human consciousness is about? Is that where our systems are driving us? And it started me on a search for then what is purpose? What is consciousness? And being in Hyderabad, I had my company based there. It was close to the Satya Sai's and the Sri Sri's, and so many wonderful Vedic gurus who I was just fortunate to learn from. And by 2010, in fact, it was on the suggestion of the head of Chariji is the name, heartfulness is the concept. He suggested that I explore energy work, which the Tibetans are very good with. And so I handed my company over to the other directors and went off to the monasteries in the Himalayas to learn what is energy and how energy drives everything. Energy drives consciousness. Energy drives E is equal to mc square. All matter is energy. So animate, inanimate, your dog, your plant, you, your wife, everything. And that has been something that we have known as a human species for 4,000-5,000 years. Would you believe that? When language was invented, it was called Chi, life force energy. And the word that you picked up from my profile, which is Qigong, is about working with energy. So the Gung is working. And then on the spectrum, we've got Tai Chi, and then finally we've got Gung Fu, which is Kung Fu, where you actually use energy to move matter, which is why Kung Fu master Bruce Lee was such a puny little guy, but he could bam. So that's the power of working with intensity. And Qigong is basically something that keeps you in alignment. It's the base of all energy work, to get the body, mind, and spirit in alignment. And it always fascinates me how everything in the universe has a trinity of body, mind, and spirit. So bringing that unity, that trinity into people is what became my purpose, is what took me, like you said, around the world doing workshops, and is what drives me in this crusade against stress, because the arch enemy of stress is energy. And if you can make friends with your enemy's enemy, you've got a good friend. So the best way to beat stress is to partner with energy, and bam. So that's where the whole circle gets completed.
When you talk about the workshops that you do now, this sounds like we're talking about a transformation here. We're talking about transforming the way people think first, and then the way people do. So from here, how did the transition to speaking happen? How did that happen? Because that's a very different form of engagement. How did that come about?
So you're saying the transformation from
a trainer or from a coach to a speaker? Tell us something about your first time on a stage, when you're addressing an audience. I'm sure there's a very interesting story lying right there waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, because my life has had some serious transitions from a consultant to the trainer coach, and then from the trainer coach to the speaker was actually thanks to PSAI. Because when I uh, first met some of the speakers that we have, PSA was just about getting formed at that time. And I met people and saw them on video and interacted with them and discovered that men, speakers, have so much more outreach than trainers. And speakers command the kind of value in 40 minutes that I command in maybe 4 hours. It just sort of made sense, that one must explore how the world of professional speaking really comes about. And so, one of the interesting experiences that I've had is when I was speaking in Mexico, because that's where my wife is from. And so we just do programs wherever we go. And so we've done them in Spain and we've done them in New Zealand and all sorts of places. In Mexico, for the first time, I realized that it's all fine to connect with energy, but you have to connect with language and the importance of having somebody who speaks their language and also vibes with you as a speaker equally is so very critical. So that was a great learning, because I would recommend that to anybody who's an aspiring speaker, that don't limit yourself to the languages you know. Just partner with somebody and get a great vibe with them, so that your message can go across to various other states, various other countries, various other nationalities, and all of that. And that's uh, how you start looking at the international playing field. Now, as a speaker, I'm a product of PSAI. I have understood how to operate myself, how to operate the ecosystem, and how to present in 40 minutes a message that could take 4 days also, because you do it with uh, a certain a certain vocabulary. You've got to optimize the words per minute, and you've got to make sure that everything that you've packed into 40 minutes has the impact of 4 hours. So you just can't be rambling around, and that's what listening to and being with professional speakers does for you. So, long short, that's what was the journey of that transition. So I still do a lot of training, I still do a lot of coaching, but I really enjoy speaking, especially for the outreach, for the platform, and more so now in the online days, because this platform is unlimited by geography.
I remember, our first conversation a few months back when we were talking over a call, and you had mentioned to me about this experience when you were addressing an audience who couldn't get your language, and you used a translator. And so, how hard or how easy is that? How did you get away with that? If I can use that term, how did you get away with that and make an impact?
So I got away because it was my wife, and we have a great vibe. But I also remembered one thing which is very, very important, which I learned from the Tibetans. Because most of these lamas are so learned, but they don't speak English. Not many of them do. They speak Tibetan. But the person who's translating in English or one of several languages there is a person who has been edified by the Lama to a very great extent. That person himself or herself has probably written books because of the depth of knowledge that they have on this subject. And likewise, my wife, she is a mindfulness coach, a meditation master herself. And so she takes on that role with a finesse that gets the audience to be very, very comfortable. Add to that, if you're smiling with your face and with your eyes and with your body language, you probably are doing a good job in connecting with the audience anyway. But where the words come in, so it's a significant point. But I repeat, do not let that deter you from going into new markets, because you can always establish the vibe, and it's always up to you to edify the person you're working with and to get that energy flowing, and then do things experientially so that people remember and they stay with that experience. So, like Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said or what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And that is the experiential part, which is something that I advocate speakers to get more into, involve the audience.
So well said. So well said, Sandeep. Yes, definitely. Speaking is speaking when you can create an experience out of it. So absolutely great. In fact, a lot of speakers, a lot of aspiring professional speakers are actually, would be doing training, would be coaching, would be mentoring, would be doing workshops. So, that journey of from 4 hours to 40 minutes, can you share
Yeah.
a few things that work for you? Can you share a few hacks, tips that work for you? How do we actually make that journey from 4 hours to 40 minutes?
Be very, very clear on what is it that you're bringing to the audience. If 40 minutes or 15 minutes is all you have, you don't beat about the bush. I mean, look at a TED speaker. The TED speaker does not introduce himself or herself. They just get into the plot with something which is interesting, which is something that grips the audience immediately. And then they may pull back and fill in their introduction later to contextualize their learnings and what they're leaving the audience behind with. So, as long as you've got that formula of hooking and then contextualizing and then leaving behind, you just need to know how to build that into modules so that it's like playing with Lego blocks. You've got these modules and you put them together, and depending on the size of your talk, you're not driven by a PowerPoint. You're driven by your stories, you're driven by exercises, you're driven by jokes, you're driven by these things that are little blocks which you put together and expand and contract. So, as a professional speaker, an aspiring professional speaker, as you mentioned, what you might want to be looking at is, have you developed those blocks in each aspect of what you speak on, what you bring to the table. So, like, I speak on stress, but that's not the only subject. It's more about productivity, for example. That's what gets impacted when you are stressed. It's more about engagement that suffers, or revenues, team relationships. Those are the kind of things that you really want to develop your modules on, your Lego blocks on, your scripts on. So, and then of course there's this occasional talk that you have on a PSI talk show where you have to extempore everything and you have no idea what you're talking about.
When you mentioned productivity and stress, and you mentioned that that's not the topic now. What if I call it your niche? Because that is that defines a professional speaker's outcome, that your niche. So how did you find, arrive at your exact niche? How was that? How did that happen? How did you decide that, okay, this is exactly, okay, this is a very broad topic, but I'm going to focus on this particular element. So what is that niche, and how did you arrive at that, Sandeep?
All right, let me say this for the record. You live your niche. The niche is not something that you arrive at accidentally or you plan out for. It is integral to you. And integral meaning you have had those experiences that make you, let's say, if your niche is parenting of teenagers, you have been parenting teenagers, otherwise, you're not authentic. Now, I have been stressed like crazy. Okay. In the beginning, you used all those alphabets for me, IIT, IIM, and there are certain expectations and there's certain conditioning that's there, and you're running a company and you've got to grow it globally and all that jazz. And that started conflicting with your purpose, and you're disturbed by the corporate world. And boy, and you still living those relationships and networking and whining and dining. So I know what the CEO is going through. I know what senior management is going through. But most of my work till, let's say, 2019, till 2020 for that matter, was with the B2C segment, because I was doing public programs and workshops, and people were, of course, there were fewer in-company programs. But in 2020, when I decided that apart from master classes and stuff I can do online, I can also go to companies and link up the improvement in health, happiness, and harmony to empirical measurements for engagement, for productivity, for decrease in absenteeism, decrease in sickness. And you can actually have type A and type B, or group A and group B, and have the differentiation with empirical data that you can get over a year. That really got me to refine whether it is stress that I am talking about, or it is renewal of the organization that I'm talking about. So you change your niche based on what's integral to you, and there could be several things integral to you, but also what your audience would understand more easily. Because I've written this book, Renewal, and here it is, and that's the basis of renewalism, which is why I'm the world's first renewalist. We'll talk about that some other time. But to renew your organization, to renew systems, processes, and people elements which you've sort of lost sight of because you've been so busy in just putting the organization together and then setting it on the rails. That requires working upon by the senior management group. And that, I would say, is my current niche, which then covers stress as well, which then covers productivity and engagement and stuff like that as well. So you've got to look at what you live and what the audience responds to or could respond to, and what you have credentials for. And that is the only way to so-called arrive at your niche. But it has to be very, very integral to the speaker, coach, consultant, trainer, anybody in this space.
Such a fantastic piece of advice. And Sandeep, in fact, that leads me to a question that's very closely related to what you just said. So once you arrived at your niche, did you go through a process of rebranding yourself? Did you have to do that all over again, or was it just a natural progression?
Well, it would have been a huge thing to just understand the dynamics of how all this plays out if it wasn't for PSAI. I got into PSAI in 2019, and I just spent maybe a few months here before I went over to Mexico, and we spent about 6 months overseas in the US, Europe. And when I came back, it was a week before the lockdown. So from July to October, what I learned from PSAI, the people I met there, and then the connections that we had because we are this community and we formed this group, that was the reason I could rebrand. And when I was in Mexico, that's when Renewal was written. And it was published when I came back, and we were already in the lockdown, and I realized that a lot of what has been written in Renewal is applicable. They're habits to change yourself mindfully and whatever. That's a different subject. So coming back to rebranding, by June, I had this book out. It's exactly a year in the market. And by about October, November, what I was able to put together was what's at sandeeptalks.com. And knowing how you benchmark against an international speaker, knowing what kind of videos and what their content should be, knowing how your site ought to look, how your introductions ought to look, which platforms you've got to network on, like eSpeaker, which is tied up with the Global Speaking Federation, of which PSI is a part. All of that is absolutely critical if you want to be speaking for money. And in fact, I've written an article on speaking for money at sandeepnath.com/speaking. So it's a definitive guide to speaking. And that's something I would recommend everybody on the show to read. Because everything that I have done in the process of rebranding is kind of documented there. And I have learned this, and I have had the support of execution teams only because of people know people in this circle. And if it wasn't for this circle, I wouldn't know anybody, and I would probably put up something with a cheaply designed book cover and whatever the 20,000 rupee website and the 50,000 rupee video. But no, you are your biggest asset, and you've got to invest in branding yourself and benchmarking against the best of the best, because that's where you want to be. So yes, that was a great question, and it was only possible because of PSAI.
Those, what you've just shared is absolute gold. That's absolute gold, because that there is so much for it for speakers to learn from that, when we are setting forward to build a brand, when we are looking at creating our understanding our niche and putting it out to the world, presenting the best version of ourselves. And I fully agree, investing in the number one asset for a professional speaker, the speaker himself or herself. So absolutely well said, Sandeep. Now, after that really valuable insight, I'm going to ask you a question. Now, every speaker has a has an incident that at that point of time might seem like a goof up. But now when you sit back, you actually sit back and laugh. Now, do you have something like that, an anecdote like that to share as a speaker, where something didn't exactly go to plan, but now we can sit back and afford a laugh?
Well, it wasn't too long back, because all of us have had this glitch with the online world. And I have had my shares too. So it is not like something that's rip-roaringly funny, in case you guys are expecting that sort of a thing. But it is something that when you look back, you find that, man, it was not a bad thing at all. What happened was, I was quite comfortable with Zoom, and Google Meets was sort of just getting in. I don't think they were very stable. I'm not too sure whether Google Meet is too stable now, but that's just my personal opinion. But I was making this presentation on that, and suddenly the video blanked out. And like I told you, I do these experiential speaking sessions. And so people had to experience stuff and they couldn't see me. And there's nothing I could do to get it back. I reset the system and everything. And what I did was, I just changed tracks. And we had people expecting something. But since they couldn't see me, it was my voice that was all that I had. I can't say I wasn't agitated, but it didn't probably come out in my voice. But I was calming myself down to mold the entire session into a meditative session, because that's something that everybody could do with screens off, and it was very legit to do that. So that's what I did. And what I learned from there was that people said that was awesome. Now, when they said that, immediately after the session ended, I got back on my camera and I made a recording, not long, just about 10 minutes of an hour long session, but 10 minutes, which I sent out to that group on WhatsApp, just to say that I'm sorry, but this is the stuff you had to see and do, and we weren't able to do it. And I thought it was like, some face saving for me. And they said, forget about it. Like, what you did was like awesome. You're so chilled out now. You don't need anything else. So, so I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. And that also reinforced in my mind, as it might in yours. But of course, reinforcement only happens when there is an initial experience of it. But think of it, whatever happens for the best. Everything is a blessing in disguise. And it's totally up to us, and very important for us as speakers, to always remain in gratitude. When you can be grateful for those 50 people out there who are intently listening to, I mean, they're just holding on to whatever they can because they can't see your lips. You are triggering what I call the G2 force switch, which is G meaning gratitude, and moving a mindset from what happens to you, and so you get victimized, to what happens for you, and so you are blessed. And you can be blessed with anything, because when you think long and hard enough about it, even things that happened 20 years ago are blessings in disguise. And if it takes you 20 years to recognize a blessing, or even 2 years, or even 2 hours, realize that you're saving all that time, guys, by just calling it a blessing here and now, and then seeing how it pans out. So life is a blessing. It always is.
In hindsight, that question seems like a full toss bowl to Sachin Tendulkar. I mean, look at it. I'm actually asking an expert on stress management that when was the time when you were stressed out in front of the stage? I mean, what a question. That was a full toss. Okay, in hindsight.
No, I'm so glad you asked that. That's the only thing I can remember right now. I'm sure I goofed up a lot of things while offline also. But this is relevant because this happens to us all the time. Wi-Fi's go bad, lights go bad, audios go bad, and you can always apply the G to 4 switch, make a habit of it, which is what renewal is about. G to 4, in fact, is a renewal habit, and just program yourself, and it happens as you do it. I mean, if you do it for 5 events in the day, in hindsight, you will start doing it faster and faster, and it won't be in hindsight anymore. It'll be in the present, and you can just be ready.
Renewalism is about individualism taking over.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You see, the individual is the one who has the habits. Thanks for flashing that one. And the byline of this book is your unexpected role in saving the planet. You've got a role to play. You know, we often say that the government didn't do this, or the boss didn't do that, or the company policy is this way. But you don't realize how empowered you are, and you just haven't scratched the surface of your power. That's what I call inner power. That's the power that we all have, and that's why they call me an inner power coach in the intro. Because the inner power is the one that you've got to start looking at. We are so distracted with the world, with gadgets, with the phones, with the neighbors, and with the coronavirus and all sorts of things, everything on the outside. The car they bought, and the Xbox, and whatever else. But if we can use that energy to go inwards, and there are ways of doing that which we've known, like I said, for 4,000 years, the game changes completely. Because then your inner power creates your outer reality. And you want to change your outer reality? You change your outer reality this way. It's totally in your control. It's your habit. It's your individuality. So that's the formula moving forward.
Amazing, Sandeep. In fact, we have two questions for you. But before that, I have a question which pertains to the times that we are living in. We are living in unprecedented times. We are living in times which we were never prepared for. The biggest catastrophe or the biggest calamity that the entire world is facing right now. So as a renewalist, is there one philosophy of renewalism which you would like to share, which all of us can, imbibe and implement in our lives to, make the world a better place? Is there one thing that you would like to share as being a renewalist?
I might sound like I am simplifying it, but then I also believe life is as complicated as you want it to be. So, at the cost of oversimplifying it, I would say that we've got to look at not only going inwards, not only tapping into our inner power, but also becoming minimalistic about what we need. And that arises from mindfulness. The pandemic, COVID, has actually nudged us in a direction of being mindful. Now, let me pull back a little. What is mindfulness? Mindfulness is about remembering what we're doing. That's it. Remembering that you have a mind, like when Rajnikant says, mind it, What he means is, remember, I'm Rajnikant. And that's what it also means when it says mind your head on a low ceiling. It means, remember, you've got a head. It doesn't say this is a low ceiling and you're going to bump into it. It just says mind your head. So being mindful means remembering to wear a mask, remembering about your personal hygiene and sanitation. The reason why I had to bring renewal out last June is because these things were what the pandemic was forcing us into. There is a level of the renewal habits which is about systemic renewal, and it's self renewal, symbiotic renewal, like relationships with each other and with the planet, and systemic renewal because each one of us can change that system. And it's another thought that's coming to me, and that tells me that that's the sign that you're getting distracted or you're allowing too many thoughts to work with you. So pulling back to the original thought that I was on, systemic renewal, for example, is about what's written in this is about telecommuting, is about online schooling, homeschooling. And I said, I've written all this in November, December last year. And this is becoming a reality today. So I've got to bring this book out. And so I brought that book out immediately. And I'm very thankful to the publishers who did a good job with it. And they promised me that they bring out the second edition as soon as I have the foreword, which I was expecting from a gentleman who is a Hall of Fame Qigong Grandmaster. His name is Dr. Yang Jwing-Ming, and he's a mentor of mine. And when he gave me that forward, then of course the pandemic was still in the same state, but the book had already got international acclaim. And so we have the second edition, which came out only last month. And that's got reviews, and renewalism.com is where they're at. In fact, you can get a free copy of the book if you like PDFs on renewalism.com. So why am I saying this? Because telecommuting is something that is an individual habit. In Delhi, I have seen how 1 week of lockdown changes the sky color from gray to blue. And all that our beloved ministers, chief ministers say about not using your vehicle, odd and even days, and all that doesn't get into our heads. So what's very important is that we start moving forward on this mindfulness journey from mask and personal hygiene to what we consume and how much we consume, how much we drive our car, for example, to relate with this. Because that's our habit, that's in our control. And that is what changes the planet. The dolphins come back. There are peacocks in my multi-story apartment last year. And what did we do? We just stopped going out, yeah?
Absolutely. So true. So true.
Yeah. And just to connect with the thought that was diverting me in the middle, because in June when I launched the book, I also broadcast what is called the Renewalism Show on YouTube and Facebook, and that had a lot of our friends from PSAI there, a lot of my friends from the international speaking circles also, and all of them are thought leaders. And I would love members of PSI to just type renewalism in YouTube and check out some of those videos. We have videos about each one of them. There are 30 videos, one for each day from June 1 to June 30, about one expert speaking about a particular habit. And either they are experts on the habit itself or they're experts in that domain. So I had an expert on policy making who's been the chair of several of these NASCOM type bodies. He spoke about systemic renewal, and that's why when I came to that subject, I just remembered him, and I thought must get people to understand that that's where the journey starts. So sorry, I spoke a lot about this, but I am divinely connected to this, so you got to excuse me for that one.
I would say that you spoke about your niche and you're living your niche, Sandeep.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, you never run out of words then.
In fact, I have two questions for you right now, which has come from the audience. The first question is that, as you know, the PSAI is an ecosystem of professional speakers. Some of them are established global speakers. Some are in the process of being established global speakers, and some are aspiring speakers. So what is your message for all aspiring speakers at the PSAI? What would be your message for them?
I was very fortunate being a part of PSAI to start my 2021 as a speaker on PSAI's international stage. And I was a speaker at the PSS 2021, which is a global summit. And that's where I made a statement which immediately comes back to me, that we are all born speakers. The only thing between a professional speaker and anybody else who's blabbering is that the professional speaker gets his message across. The audience has to receive the message. That is what the professional is paid for. So all you have to see is whether in what you speak and what you convey, there is a gap between what the audience is retaining and what you're sending out. If the audience is not retaining what you have as your message, you are not a speaker. You're not even an aspiring speaker. You are a blabberer. And everybody can speak. At times, I would accuse myself of being a blabberer. I might be hard on myself. I might be real. But unless you and I, each one of us, goes through that self-test and kind of mindfully remembers that this was my message, and is that what I have ended on? Is that what I've got across to this audience? Unless that's happening, you need to do that fine-tuning. And if that is happening, you need to do it with more and more interesting stuff. So that's when you start packing more into those Lego blocks, and that's when your value keeps increasing. So there's nothing like uh, an aspiring speaker. Everybody speaks, like they say, the first 18 months you teach your kids to stand up and speak. The next 18 years you teach them to sit down and listen. But everybody speaks 18 months onwards. So there you go.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm sure that's a lot of solid value for a lot of speakers at the PSAI. Now, the second question for you that's from the audience is that could you share two great ways to pivot to launch yourself as a speaker globally? Now, since you're coming from a background of having spoken in multiple cities across the world, so from your experience, what would be those two things that you would want to share with the community and to our listeners? That what would what are those two things that they could do right now?
The first thing you could do with no prejudice is join the PSAI. I say this because I told you I'm a product of PSAI. All my branding is because of that. My international speaking opportunity, which I just mentioned at PSAI's most prestigious event, is because of that. My websites are because of that. My understanding of what separates an aspiring speaker, as Vinay just said, from a professional speaker, comes from watching people here, watching people everywhere for that matter. But here we meet on a weekly basis, and it is so much fun. It's a community. It's home. So if you are getting that kind of an atmosphere to nurture your speaking ability and to nurture your get feedback on your talk, whether it's going across, whether you're connecting with the audience or not, that's invaluable. Absolutely. The second thing is, don't limit yourself. Your fears, your projections are your biggest saboteurs. Today, there is no difference between speaking in India, speaking in your city, and speaking globally. I don't know how many people, I think because my wife is from Mexico, I did see at the beginning there were some people from Mexico who joined it. So actually, I don't know whether that's happened in earlier PSAI talk shows, but guys, this is a global event. I'm just speaking globally. All right. And so are you, Vinay. You're speaking to people who have at least three languages and two nationalities. So, so going global, there is nothing to it. Just believe in yourself that you've got a message which people out there need to hear. If you are shy of the camera, get onto Clubhouse. I find that as a great medium that has just started. It's an audio only medium. And I find great people with great voices and messages who make me realize how I've got to mold my message. And so Clubhouse is a good medium because you just blah blah blah. It's like Radio FM where you can be a participant at any point in time. So that would be good. But don't use the word global. Don't throw that word at me and think you need to pivot anything for it. You are already there.
Fantastic. That was literally hitting it out of the park, Sandeep. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. You just renamed the talk show from a PSAI talk show to a PSAI global talk show.
I have my in-laws and friends to thank for that.
Amazing, amazing. Sandeep, in fact, now I have got basically 3 rapid fire questions for you. I'm going to throw it off at you. I know you're not prepared for this, and here they come. Okay, your first question: what is your favorite movie quote?
Wow. So my favorite movie is The Last Samurai, and the quote is probably the longest message you would ever hear, and it would probably haunt you till the end of your life because you wouldn't maybe get it. And the message is no mind. No
Wow.
mind.
Profound.
That's what he says when Tom Cruise is learning how to work the swords.
That's indeed an amazing movie. That's indeed an amazing movie. Now, the next rapid fire question comes at you. If you could talk in your sleep, what would you say, my friend?
That depends who else is in my dream, yeah. But what I probably if you wake me up and want me to say something, I'd probably say that you have not scratched the surface of what you're capable of. And I would say that to myself, of course, and I would say that to anybody around.
Wow. Last one coming right at you. Tell us something about you that people do not know. Something that will just, surprise our audience right now. They wouldn't be expecting that. Come on, out with that.
The audience is going to think that I was prepared for these questions and not the ones you asked before. But the truth is, I wasn't prepared for any of them. But this guy gives me those questions. I love Vinay. I mean, he's an awesome guy. And I am reading to you the dedication from my book because nobody significant. I mean, no significant numbers have read this book. So if you're asking for something which nobody would know, probably nobody would know. And even if they've read the book, they probably not read the dedication. And I say this because this book is dedicated to my mother because she relayed my purpose in life to me while I was still being nurtured in her womb. She spoke with me while I was there, urging me to live life unchained to standard societal expectations. She instructed me to stay liberated and to teach the world how to do the same, to facilitate the raising of consciousness by making changes in the way we think of our lives, our priorities, our jobs, keeping busy, raising kids, and all that. 42 years passed before I could revisit that sounding deep in my subconscious. It arose through a meditative connection with my inner power. And when my mother reconfirmed that this dialogue had actually occurred with her womb, that was the day I felt released to the world in a real sense. And life has been incredible ever since. So I guess not many people have been having conversations with their moms. I did.
Speechless. Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, Sandeep. Literally speechless. And a speaker like Sandeep, obviously, I should have expected that he would definitely be giving the last question of this talk show. He would literally lay it out, and that's exactly what it. Thank you so much, Sandeep. This was such an informative and such an amazing conversation. There's so much that you have shared so much amazing value with all of us here, all the viewers, and the entire PSAI community, this entire PSAI family. You've shared so much with all of us in terms of your wisdom, in terms of your experience, and also all of us had so much fun listening to you.
You can't say that. You haven't seen the audience response
Felt
yet.
like you're having a cup of coffee.
Yeah, it is real fun, Vinay. And I must say that the answers wouldn't have come if the questions weren't there. So that's what made this so lively. Awesome, awesome battery of questions. And thanks so much for the last one. It was a sitting duck. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we had the world's number one and the first renewalist out here, Sandeep Nath, a global speaker, our very own member of the PSAI. And thank you so much, Sandeep. Thank you so much. Big round of applause to you from all of
Thanks
us.
everybody watching. Thanks for being here. Thanks for making your time to watch us live. And if you're watching non-live, thanks for watching. If you've come here, you watched. Thanks a lot.
Definitely. And here's wishing you amazing success with the second edition of Renewal, and let it be another blockbuster success. And and looking forward to seeing you on a lot of international platforms going right after here.
All of you. All of you. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sandeep. Wonderful. That was Sandeep Nath, one of our senior speakers from the Professional Speakers Association of India, and we had an amazing conversation with him where he shared so much of his insight, so much of his experience, his expertise about his niche, and most importantly also the way his journey from the in the PSAI has shaped his speaking career, and the way he's crafted that and become a truly respected name in global speaking. So thank you to all of you who've been watching us. I will now have our co-host join us.
Hello, Vinay. What a conversation. What a beautiful conversation. Hi, Vinay. I am astounded. I almost had goosebumps on that third question that bowled us all. So I think thanks to you for asking that question. And thanks to Sandeep for bringing out that story to all of us. And while I was listening to this amazing conversation, I did two things. So the first was I went to Sandeep's website and went through his blog when he mentioned that he's talked about everything professional speaking there. And to all our members and all those who are aspiring to become professional speakers, it's a must go to blog. You must go through it, and it has some real value. And the second thing that I did was a little because on the spur of the moment, I went to Amazon and I bought his book. I'm not sure if it is visible, but I bought his book from Amazon Kindle and I'm going to read it ASAP. So, talking about this talk, Vinay, there were two things that stood out. One was that the ease with which Sandeep talked, and it talked about how much authority he had over his thoughts. The second thing was that in such plain, simple words, he dedicated all his success as a professional speaker to PSAI. I think we have to take inspiration from him and understand how being a part of a community can help a professional speaker, an aspiring professional speaker, to upskill themselves, to understand how a keynote is structured, to understand how to budget your words and how to fit in more into that set of Legos. So, for all the viewers who are watching us, I would like to invite you all to become a part of this beautiful family that we are all here. And The memberships are open, and please reach out to us at www.psai.in and see what is it in for you, what it is in for you there, and just join in. We are waiting for you. We are waiting for you excitedly. Thank you, Vinay, for this beautiful conversation once again.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anupriya. Thank you so much. And please do click on www.psai.in for the membership details, and let's meet soon for the next one. See you all. Have a great night.